Okay. So I'm super excited about the webinar content we have today. If you have just joined us via Facebook, welcome. So we have kind of a Zoom group here and a Facebook group. And I do want to double check that my sound is working. So I'm going to look over to my coworker. She's double checking the sound for me. She's going to let me know once it has synced up and it's working. I'm getting a thumbs up, so that's good. I'm also going to pull this up on my phone so that if you guys have any comments kind of as we're going, I can kind of keep track of them. And that will be super awesome. So just give me a second here. There we go. I think it is on. Alrighty, awesome. So welcome. Happy Thursday morning. My name is Gina. I'm one of the marketing coordinators here at Ugly Mug Marketing. And today we've kind of got a webinar that's a little tiny bit different than some of the ones we've done before, but this one is all about what we can learn from our nonprofit friends. And so most of the content today is based off of best practices, things that we've picked up on over the years here at Ugly Mug, as well as some content from a book that is one of our favorites called Zilch by Nancy Lublin. The subtitle is How Businesses and Not-for-Profits Can Get More Bang with Less Buck. And so Nancy Lublin is the CEO of Do Something and the founder of Dress for Success, which are two kind of reputable big name nonprofits. And so I learned a lot from reading this book, and it's definitely one that we encourage nonprofits to read, but it's also a great one for our for-profit friends to read as well, because she has lots of tips on how you can use your resources to the best of your abilities. And so even if maybe you don't have the largest budget to put behind your marketing campaign, she has some tips on ways that you can use the people in your organization, the resources in your organization to really push your campaign forward and kind of do the most with them. So I'm going to share my screen. I have a PowerPoint for you guys. I'm going to pull that up really quickly, and then we will kind of dive right into that. If you have questions as we are going, let me know. Just put it in the comments there. That would probably be the best idea. Well, let's see. Oh, well, just kidding. Here we go. All righty. We're going to jump right on there. Well, see if I can do speaker view. All right. Thanks. We have Rebecca joining here on Zoom. We also have, I think, Tori on Zoom, so that's exciting. So I'm going to pull it over here. Cool. I think that's going to stay out of our way. And then, so for all of my Zoom people, again, we're on Facebook Live as well. So if you just don't mind keeping yourself muted, that would be great. If you have questions or comments, you can stick them in the Zoom chat box or put them in real time on Facebook Live as we're on there as well. And so that would be awesome. Again, I am Gina. I'm one of the marketing coordinators at Ugly Mug Marketing, and we're jumping into the webinar that is going to cover some concepts of what we could all learn from our not-for-profit friends. So we're going to jump right in. Well, let's see if it'll let me. There we go. Again, if you're on Zoom, you can mute yourself here, and there's a little chat box there that I will get to kind of in between questions. Again, speaker view, if you are watching via Zoom, you click that gallery button there. Make sure it says gallery view, and that way you'll see the speaker view. So there you go. All right, so quick introduction. Again, for the third time, I'm Gina Arnold. This is me, marketing coordinator at Ugly Mug Marketing. A little bit about myself. Move my face over here. A few of my favorite things. I love traveling. I love coffee. I'm a real big fan of French pressed Guatemalan roast coffee. And I love the beach, and I really love my little dog, Bingley. He's a little bit bigger than that now, but he's a peekapoo, a little Pekingese mini poodle, and he's the cutest thing ever. I think I love him to death. He's a little crazy though. So if y'all have dog training tips, send them my way. And so, what is marketing? Marketing is your ability to attract and keep customers. That's an important definition to kind of keep in mind. That's how we define it here at Ugly Mug. And it's kind of going to be at the core of a lot of the things we're talking about today. Alrighty. Okay, so making much out of zilch. That is the book we've got here. So today we're going to be talking through how to reinforce your brand identity, your team, your evangelists through your customer service, your budget and resources, and your company's story, so that you can make the most out of zilch or nothingness, right? Alrighty, so first off, we're going to talk about your brand. It may seem kind of obvious, but your brand is very important. And it doesn't have to cost you a whole lot to reinforce your brand. And so what we've got here is your brand identity is unique, simple, consistent, relevant. I want you to ask yourself that. Is it unique, simple, consistent, relevant? I want you to think for a second here. So you can build a strong brand without spending a small fortune, simply by keeping it simple. And so thinking about your brand, are you returning to your core purpose on a regular basis? Are you trying to like reach in too many directions? And then keep in mind what keeps you unique, right? Are you the first, the only, the fastest, the best, the cheapest? What sets you apart? Find those keywords that truly are the ones that say, this is what makes me unique, and really, really focus on those throughout your marketing campaign. And so that brand identity is very, very important. And we're going to kind of talk about a few ways we can really reinforce that. I thought this was a great quote by Nancy Lublin in the book, and I know it's kind of long, but I'm going to read it because I think it's important. She wrote, "A brand is so much more than the product or the service itself. It's bigger than a logo or a tagline. It's the receptionist's tone of voice when she answers the phone, the experience of every single consumer, a typo in the letter to a donor, the reputation of a celebrity spokesperson, the quality of the programs, and the composition of the board of directors. It is our every action and inaction, the unintended consequences as well as the intended ones. A brand is that big." So when I say brand, I want you to think even outside of the box, not just your logo, not just your mission statement, not just your billboard. You know, you're thinking larger than that, larger scale. Your brand is what makes up your full identity. And each one of these little elements that she mentions are parts of what are going to make your customers and your employees think a certain way about your company. And so thinking really strategically about these things doesn't have to cost you anything. It can simply be how you present yourself, how you answer the phone, having a phone guidebook of how your team is going to respond to people on the phone. Like those little things build up your brand and make you who you are. And so when you're thinking about brand identity a little bit more specifically, I wanted to show you guys one resource that we use a lot of times when we're starting off with our clients. It's just a brand identity worksheet. And this helps you to narrow down how are you viewed by everyone who comes in touch with your organization. And it really helps you to figure out, okay, where on this spectrum am I? And do we all have the same vision for what our brand is? Because if I feel like my brand is this, but my coworker thinks my brand is that, and my boss thinks my brand is that, like there's going to be some confusion, right? And so this is one way that as a marketing agency, we can go in and really understand our client's vision for their brand. And that's going to come across in how we present ourselves, Facebook ads we're running, designs we're creating, billboards, you know, the sky's the limit. And so this is a helpful little tool. As you can kind of see, we usually say, okay, do you want your business to be, do you want people to think of you more as an elite business or more mass appeal, right? And so you're comparing, you know, Chanel with H&M. Do you want everyone to come to you, or do you want just like a specific few? Or is there a certain audience you're trying to target? And we kind of go through that. So like serious to playful, conventional to rebel, friend, authority, mature and classic to young and innovative. And that just helps you kind of figure out where your target audience is going to be. And then it helps you to figure out what your brand is going to be presented as. And so I want you to think for a second, do you have defined brand guidelines? Do you have some kind of book, or is it just an email you send out? Do you have some kind of procedure where your team across the board knows this is what our brand should look like? This is what it shouldn't look like. That's something that's inexpensive, but it can truly build up your company in the way people see you presented in public. And one thing that Nancy mentioned in the book, which I thought was valuable, was that every team member has a responsibility to guard the brand. So it's not just up to you as the owner or you as the cashier. It's up to everyone on the team to guard that brand and to know the brand and how it should be presented, whether you're answering the phone or whether you are typing an email. It's so important. So I want you to take a second, and if you're watching live on Facebook or on Zoom, can you tell us in the comments if your brand were a car? You don't have to tell us the name of your company, but if your brand were a car, what kind of car would it be? What color? Would it be an old, a new, a used car? What would be your price point? And then I want you to think, would everyone in your company have the same answer? So if you don't mind, I'll give you a second. I want you to kind of think about it, leave it in the comments. And I just want it to be, a little bit more thoughtful. So as you're thinking about your brand, as you're thinking about the direction you would want to go, how do you want people to perceive you and your brand? And then thinking about it kind of as if it were a car might help you kind of hone down on some things that you may not have realized before. So think about that for a second. I'm going to go through some questions, see if anybody had anything so far. Let's see. I know it's a good book. I definitely would suggest it. So again, hop on Amazon, grab this little book. It's very, very helpful. I enjoyed reading it. She's just a very insightful writer. And she tells lots of stories and gives lots of examples of really big name nonprofits and organizations that she's worked with doing just consulting and different things. And so definitely a good read. Okay, so we're going to move on. I want you to keep thinking, like, if your brand were a car, what would it be? And then would everyone on your team in your company have a same answer? If the answer is yes, then likely you have some brand consistency. If the answer is no, maybe go back to that brand exercise. Think, okay, where on the spectrum would my brand be? Do we have a consistent way that we're supposed to be responding to customers or clients? And think about some of those things. All right, and so the next thing we want to talk about reinforcing is your team. That's another kind of no-brainer, but it's really big. And Nancy Lublin spends even like 2 chapters talking about your team and your people, really using the most of your people. So your team, although it may seem a little bit obvious, but they really are the ones who will make it happen on the day-to-day, right? So kind of what we picked up on is, how do you make your team the most effective? You got to figure out what they're passionate about. Passion is going to drive the boat of what they're doing. So here's a couple steps. So step 1, know what is going to get your team out of bed in the morning. And I'm not talking about an alarm clock. So what are the things that they're passionate about? Step 2, you want to give them more of that. So fuel their passion for your organization, because your team should be the most enthusiastic for your product and service. That might seem a little bit of countercultural, but your team is hugely instrumental in backing up your product and backing up your service. They have to believe in it. And so you really want to make sure that when they come to work every day, they feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves, right? They are passionate about what they're doing. They see the meaning in it. And so step 3 kind of goes along with that. Include them in your vision for the company. Be transparent, be willing to share with them your overall hopes and dreams for the company and how you see it making an impact in the world. Whether you are a for-profit or a not-for-profit, everything you do is going to have meaning, is going to affect someone or affect someone's quality of life, in some way. Find those little things that give your product or service its root meaning, its root cause, and share that with your team, right? And so that's something you can do at little to no cost, and that will really, really push your team to give it their all. And then another kind of thought along with working through with your team is consider your work environment. So your work environment can build teamwork, camaraderie, or unity, or kind of the lack thereof. So think about, could you foster a more communal workspace? If everyone is in an individual little office cubicle, there may not be as much community, there may not be as great of a teamwork, collaborative effort happening. So when possible, are you able to allow maybe the newbies on the team to shadow you or another team member? Think about how that could grow a sense of purpose and a sense of meaning in your team and in your employees. And then, of course, aesthetics aren't everything, but does your space feel inspiring, or is it fun? Or does your team walk in every day and feel like, oh my goodness, I'm in the same 4 walls and they're the same color and there's nothing inspiring about it at all? So think through those things. Those are some little things. And I'm not saying you have to revamp your office or anything, but it might be something to consider. Do you need some kind of poster on the wall? Something to make it a little bit fun, something to encourage everybody. Maybe that just looks like repainting a wall in the office or moving some desks around. And so in the book, Nancy also mentioned this quote, and I think it's relevant to the conversation. It's something to remember, is that every person matters. So every person in your company, every person your company has ever encountered and will encounter has the capacity to become a great asset to you for years to come. So whether that's customers, clients, whether that is your intern from 3 years ago, whether that is your mom, whether that is your employee that had to quit and go to school somewhere else, the sky's the limit. But each one of those people have the capacity to be valuable to you, to your company, to your brand, depending on how you interact and how you follow through with those relationships. So here's a couple thoughts. If volunteers or employees leave your organization for whatever reason, will they still be an ambassador for you? Do you foster goodwill? So whatever that looks like, if they just had to leave of their own will, if you had to maybe let a team member go, are you still fostering goodwill? Especially think about interns. They're only with you for a summer maybe, or maybe for a semester, but then they leave. That's the intention. But did you build a relationship with them where they're going to leave your company? And even if maybe they had some kind of issue here or there, they still believe in your company. They still believe in you and what you're doing. So they're still going to be an ambassador for you. So think through that. And then do you follow up with short-term volunteers or interns in any way? If you have some kind of internship program, not everyone does, but if you do, are you following up with those people? And so the volunteers, that'd be more along the lines of if you're in a nonprofit sector, of course. And so here's a couple ideas too. You can provide opportunities for continued learning and skill development in your industry. That's one way to kind of bolster your team. And then just a general, doesn't cost you a thing, thanks, right? Words of affirmation and sticky notes of thanks go a long way and cost you little to nothing. And so just leaving words saying, hey, I'm really grateful I saw that. That's not going to cost you anything. And it could completely change the trajectory of somebody's day, right? And so kind of think through that. Think through how you are reinforcing your team. And then if you are brave, tell me in the comments, what's one way you could motivate or inspire your team this week? And so let me know in the comments. I'm going to kind of go through, see if anybody had any questions while you guys think through that question. And let me know, how could you inspire or motivate your team this week? We have several people watching. Hi, Brandon. It's nice to see you on Facebook, and Brad. Hey, Christopher, Beverly. I'm so glad y'all are joining. Angela, how's it going? Hey, Ronnie. So glad y'all are on here. Rebecca, you're still hanging with me on Zoom too. I think we have some more people. I can't see them right now because I'm sharing my screen. All right. Cool. We're going to jump ahead here to your evangelist. So how you can reinforce your evangelist might mean something different than you think it does. When I say evangelist right now, I'm talking about your clients and customers and friends of the business. And so we're going to kind of move forward. How do you create evangelists for your product or your service? And that is largely in part by having a consumer-focused mentality. So the way you think about your customers doesn't cost you a penny, right? It just costs a little bit of time and maybe reworking of your thought process of how you do business or how you approach customers. And so one thing that kind of we talk about a lot at Ugly Mug, and also Nancy mentions in her book, is we want to see people first, and we want to see customers second, right? So every customer, every person you send an email to, every person who likes or comments on your Facebook post, they're a real person, right? They have real thoughts, real values, real needs. And so viewing those people as people is hugely important as you kind of create that relationship with your customers and your clientele. And so think about like, how do you show your people that you're for them? Gratitude and care are free and they speak volumes. And so one book, I kind of threw it on here just as a reference. We read this one last year. It's called Know What You're For by Jeff Henderson, a growth strategy for work and an even better strategy for life. I really enjoyed reading that one. And it's all about how you can use your social media platform marketing to show your customers, to show your clients, just your page likes, show the people who are interested in your business that you're not just out to throw a sales pitch their way every single time, right? Sometimes maybe you post about your clients, maybe you highlight your employees. You're showing that you're about people, you're building that relationship. Social media is called social media because it's supposed to be, right, a social environment. And so if you're constantly just posting your next sales pitch, you could be losing out on some of the relationship and trust building that could be happening there. So really the question is, how do you get someone from being a complete stranger of your company or even just a friend of your company to being a customer and then an evangelist for your company? So first off, you need to identify and need to know your people. One way that we do this with our clients is we get new clients to fill out this customer avatar sheet right here. So if you've been following us a little while, you may have heard us talk about it before. But it really helps you to narrow down who your target consumer or donor, customer, client would be. And so some of the things you want to think through are, what are their goals? Like, is there a specific way that they get their news and their information? What are some challenges for them? What would be an objection to them making a purchase? And so one thing that I thought was interesting that I pulled again from my little Zilch book here is that you should determine what motivates people. And there are about 5 ways that people are motivated in general. Those are going to be guilt, goodness, empathy, anger, and ego. Those are the top 5. And so finding a way to connect with people emotionally is definitely a way of showing that you're a human being too, right? And so I don't necessarily know that you want to, guilt trip your customers, but can you show how you're empathetic? Can you kind of appeal to their empathy, especially if you're a nonprofit? Are you showing a story of what you're doing that's going to help people to really kind of get on board with that in that project and feel empathetic towards it and kind of join your cause. And so really thinking about what drives people, what motivates them can be huge. And then how can you turn your fans into ambassadors and evangelists for your organization? That's a good question, and we're going to talk about it in the next slide. But I want you to keep in mind that word of mouth costs you nothing, right? So that is one of the best forms of marketing, and it's hard to come by, and you can't buy it. So that's something you have to build up with your customers, and we're going to talk a little bit about how we do that at Ugly Mug. So we talk about the life cycle of a customer every so often with our team. And it really is about, going with a client or with a person through the whole process. And so one thing that we always talk about is how, you might meet up with a person who he's a complete stranger. So like someone walking down the street on the other side of town probably has never heard about Ugly Mug, right? Or maybe they have, but we're going to pretend like this person has never heard about Ugly Mug. They don't follow us on Facebook. They've never been recommended to us by anyone. They've never heard about us. So they're a stranger. So what we need to be able to do to get them from stranger to a friend of the company is we need to figure out how to start a relationship with them, right? So that they know and they like us. And so once they know about us and they like about it, maybe they've seen a Facebook post, maybe they've joined our email list, then they'll be in the friend category. And then for someone to go from a friend to a customer, you're kind of bridging that next little gap there, because that's a little bit harder to come by. You have to say, all right, you like me and you know me, but now you have to trust me. And so what we're wanting to do is to build trust with our potential customers, right? With maybe new leads. How do you build that trust? We're going to be, sending them emails. We're going to give them valuable content. Is there a way that we can reach out to them? Maybe send them a note. I'm not sure, whatever that looks like for you and your company. But we want to get them from friend to customer through building this relationship of trust. If I don't trust a company, I'm a lot less likely to buy something from them. That's just kind of how it goes. And then from customer to evangelist is kind of like the awesome sauce at the top, right? So you want your customers to be the biggest advocates for your company, for your brand, for your product. And they have to love you at that point. It's not enough just to have good customer service. It's not enough just to have a good product. Like, you have to be remarkable. Are you giving them maybe unexpected, remarkable customer service? What is moving them and driving them to being a full-blown evangelist for your company? And that's key, because that is not going to cost you anything, but it may lead to future strangers becoming friends, becoming customers, becoming evangelists, right? And so you want to foster this. And really, the way you're building trust and nurturing these relationships to continue the cycle, definitely consider email marketing, right? You can personalize emails, you can segment them. You're going to send different emails to a friend than you would to a customer, right? You're not going to send a demo email, like a product demo, to a customer who's already bought the product. But you might send that to a friend, whereas you're not going to send an email at all to a stranger who's never given you their email address, right? And so it's hitting people in different ways and kind of meeting them where they are in this cycle. And so that's kind of just a neat way to view that. And just remember that you are reaching each of these people where they're at, and they're not all in the same place. And so thinking through, just valuing this relationship with your customers or potential customers, just some good things to take notes on if you're taking notes. Personalized and segmented email marketing. That means, grouping your email, not sending everyone the exact same thing, making it as personal and valuable content for that individual as possible. If you have a social media page, are you giving valuable and educational content, or is it all just salesy? Educational content is a great way to build trust in your product and your company. Appropriately following up with leads. Perhaps you set up like an automated welcome email. That's a great way to follow up with someone who maybe for the first time gives you their email address and says, I might be interested in your product or your company. And then direct mail outs, handwritten notes, that can be a great way to foster that relationship. So really my thought is be extraordinary. How can you be extraordinary? So think for a second, what is the best customer service you have ever experienced in your entire life? Just take a second, think about it. What is the best customer service you've ever experienced? You can think about like maybe where it was, or maybe it was a specific person. And then think about how can you meet that and be even better? Because that's what's going to make you extraordinary. That's what's going to set you apart, right? So tell me in the comments, if you're brave, what is one actionable step you could take to improve your company customer relationship? Whether that's over a longer period of time, or whether that's something very specific that you could do this week. What is one thing you could do to improve your company to customer relationship? I'm gonna see if anybody had any questions. I know I saw a comment. Oh yeah, I love that. Okay, so Tori said kind of along the lines of our last question, for her employees, they were celebrating work anniversaries by spinning the prize wheel. And so, yeah, that's a great way to encourage your team. Just kind of have like a spin the wheel. And that way they're able to kind of feel motivated, feel loved, know that you're there for them. That's awesome. I love it. Awesome. Hey, Veronica, glad you're watching. Courtney, glad y'all are on here with us. Okay. So if you have a second, think through that actionable step. I would suggest that even if you're not wanting to put it in the comments, like jot it down on a sheet of paper, or like on a sticky note. Think about a way that you can really use this in your week, maybe next week. And hopefully it'll give you a really actionable way to take this content and use it to develop your team and your product and your customer base. Okay, so next point we want to reinforce our budgeting. And really the biggest thing, I'm not gonna go into a whole lot of detail here because this is not my area. Don't ask me about budgeting, please. But if you are in the nonprofit world, if you've ever even touched the nonprofit world, you know that most of the time they don't just have they're not just like throwing money at people. Sometimes they are, but not all the time. And they have to be very, very careful about how they spend money, because if I'm giving a donation to a nonprofit, I expect them to use it properly and appropriately to put it towards their projects or whatever it is that I'm supporting. And so kind of what Nancy does in her book is says, here are some really, I guess, innovative ways that you can think about your budgeting that could help your for-profit business maybe think outside the box a little bit more, think a little bit more like a nonprofit. And so her big thing is, you need to be innovative. Budgeting is hard. She describes it as I think a war at times. It can be very grueling, but it's necessary. And it causes you to be creative, because when you have a budget in place, it's going to cause you to innovate. It's going to cause you to find creative ways to use what you do have, to use those resources that you budgeted for, A, B, and C. Let's see. So with your budget comes shared responsibility. That one might be a hard one to swallow. But Nancy says, imagine if everyone in your organization, from the CEO down to the workers in the mailroom, felt personally responsible for their corporate spending. Think about how different things would be if they were all to treat the company's money as if it were their own. And so that's kind of an interesting thought. Not exactly the most common in probably the for-profit world, as it would be in the not-for-profit world, which is, I think, why Nancy brings it up in her book. And so here are some action steps, not from me, from Nancy. And so she kind of mentions, instead of an annual budget, consider thinking multi-year budgets. She mentioned that with a lot of these really high end, I don't know if you call it a high end nonprofit, really reputable nonprofits, they generally would stick with 3-year budgets. And that keeps them, gives them a little bit of flexibility to hit the projects that they want to. And if maybe giving is down 1 year, it's budgeted over time. So it's less, going to be less of a catastrophe if like 1 year isn't maybe as great as the next year. And there's kind of this idea that you're compensating for different projects and different stages and seasons because it's a longer period of time, not such a short one. And so that might be doable for you. It may not be, but I thought it was an interesting concept, and so I wanted to put it on here for you to think through. Another one, which I do think is valuable, she says, behave as if you lived in a glass house. That idea of financial transparency. Are you the only one looking at your budget, or do you have other people in your team, or does everyone on your team get to see, okay, here's your itemized list, here's what we're spending, here's what we need to be spending. How transparent are you across the board? And that can also kind of aid towards like a general purpose, everyone kind of being on the same page as far as what your budget should look like. And then achieving more stability by diversifying revenue. That is not going to be doable for everyone, but it's definitely something to consider. She says, if like the majority of your revenue is coming from like this one product, then that all that has to happen is that one product, something happens, and that's going to affect your business hugely. Whereas if you're able to diversify, maybe you have like programs, or you have an event, or you have a class, or you can kind of diversify it in a little bit of a way that will keep you a little more stable in case one of those maybe doesn't do as well. And then she also mentions, which I'm huge on this, but she says, capitalize on your surplus and don't waste your resources. So that's the idea. If you have an extra room in your office, is there any way that you could even like maybe trade off with somebody, say, oh, you have this, maybe there's like, someone needs like that extra little space to work for their own business. Maybe they have something to offer that you don't. And so you can kind of, maybe trade a space with them. Or if you have a bunch of extra, I don't know, paper, envelopes, something that you're not going to use again. Paper is a bad example. You'll always reuse your paper. But if you realize like you have excess of something, is there a way that you can use it instead of just, marking it down and selling it for really cheap? Is there another way that you could maybe add value to it? Is there a way that you can kind of work with maybe others in your community to kind of capitalize on that surplus? So that is going to look different kind of for every business. It's going to look different for nonprofits than it would be for for-profits. But I thought it was an interesting concept to kind of consider as you're thinking of how can we budget better. And the last little item here that we want to reinforce is your story. And this one is probably my favorite because I was an English major in college and I love a good story. And so I think her take on telling your story is really valuable and intriguing. So you're going to tell your story, right? Not this one, sorry. All right, so your story. Have you identified it? What is your story? That could be anything from, how your company began, like what's your history? And then I wanted to kind of throw this in here. She kind of mentions it as your Genesis account. So like your beginnings. And how does your Genesis account affect your vision for today? And then again, for 5 to 10 years down the road, right? And so kind of her idea is that you would include every level of your organization here. If you're the only one who knows maybe the ups and downs of starting your business and why you came to be and how you came to be, you're not really using that story to its fullest potential, right? But if everyone in your organization is on board, they understand the shared vision of where you're going, how you got here. And so again, transparency doesn't cost you a whole lot, but it's something to consider. It's valuable. And so you want to give your team, your supporters, your community a clear why behind what you do, right? Why are you doing what you're doing? And so I did throw another resource this way. If you're having a hard time kind of like vision casting and like pulling your team together, really deciding, okay, how do I get everyone on board? Like, I know where I've been, I know where I want to go, but I don't know how to get everybody on board with me. That's a good resource for you, Vivid Vision by Cameron Harold. So that would be a good one for you to check out. Also, just thinking through your story, go back in your mind. Sometimes I think we forget like where we came from, right? And so you want to go back and think through what are some things, maybe some ups and downs that got me to where I am, and would people be interested in hearing about those things? So that's something to consider. And then my challenge to you is to write them down once you think about them. And so some ways of doing that, for your personal story, you definitely want to have some kind of, maybe it's on your website. Maybe you have like a short little, about us section. Maybe it's a video you're able to create, to post on your Facebook, or on your website as well. Something that allows you to share, here's where we came from, here's what we believe in, here's where we're going, with your clients, your employees, anyone and everyone. That way, everyone's kind of on the same page. And then some other ways of kind of creating stories, because people love stories, right? Who doesn't love a good story? You're going to get a lot more traction, a lot more interaction with a story than you would with like a list of numbers and stats, right? So here's my challenges to you. Can you start collecting positive customer feedback stories and actually sharing them? That's a great way to incorporate your customers, but also to like build your credibility. So you can use these on your website. You can use these on social media platforms. Maybe you have a booklet full of testimonials. Some way that you can put those customer stories to work. And then this may not apply to everyone, but if there's like a local celebrity or like a local well-known person who really, really enjoys your product or your service, would they maybe be willing to help you spread the word? So networking, don't be afraid of it. And then if your CEO had the chance to appear on Oprah, here's my funny question for the day. What would he or she talk about? So that's the one I really want you to kind of think on, because if your CEO is going to be talking to Oprah, she's not going to care about the numbers, how much everything costs, and what your daily schedule looks like. Like, she doesn't want to know all that. She wants the story behind what you're doing, right? So think about that, and that might help you kind of hone in your story a little bit. And then lastly, what story is your competition telling? Because if they're telling a better story than you are, there might be a little bit of friction. So are you telling a story that's true, that's genuine, that's real, that's authentic? And are you getting it out there? Because that's so key. If I Google your business, am I gonna see, oh, look, they've done this and this and that, and here's how they got here, and here's what they're doing for the community, and maybe they have a really awesome Genesis account of how they started this business, and so those are the things that people connect with, right? Because we're humans, and that goes back to well, let's see, hold on, there we go. Whoops, I lost my share screen. There we go. Hold on, sorry about that. All right, we're back. Okay, so that's going to go back to, I'm glad it didn't show y'all all of that craziness. I think I got a phone call, and so it like shut my entire Zoom down. So side note, sorry, I got very distracted there, but we're back. So what you're wanting to do is to define your story and just tell it, right? Because like I said, we are people. People connect with stories. People connect with a good story. So you want to have your story. and then you want to tell it well. So that's my challenge for you, is to tell your story well. And I hope that you're able to kind of take some of these elements of this little handy dandy book, and some of the things that we've kind of worked towards here at Ugly Mug. And I hope it's helpful to you as you're thinking through maybe your budget, or just doing more with less, right? And so if you have any questions, now might be a time to throw them in the chat box, or in the Facebook messages. We may already have a few, sorry. Well, let's see. If you have any, feel free to kind of throw them all there for me. And then let's see. Okay. All right. So I do have a couple questions. Let's see. Where can I get the book is definitely Amazon. Amazon is where you can get the book. And then another idea was just to send some words of encouragement to teams. I love that one. Tori, you mentioned improving your email send outs by a lot. Yeah, I do think you can improve your email, and that doesn't even always mean more. It sometimes just means better value or better quality, I guess. Your content might be, maybe you need to reevaluate the content, because if your entire email is just one sales letter and there's no educational content or no informational content that's going to give value to the person reading the email. I don't know about you, but I just go through all of my my advertisement emails a lot of the times and just feel like there's far too many of them. And if it's not very, very like eye-catching, if it doesn't look like something I would be immediately interested in, I'm probably going to delete it. So thinking about that, and optimizing like your subject lines, that's all part of marketing. That's something you can kind of test and work through. But really the content of your email, you want to give your people value, and that's how you're building trust. And there are a few products where I think I've maybe bought something from them once or twice, but I still get their emails, and I enjoy getting their emails because sometimes it's a recipe, or sometimes it's like a really valuable like planning kind of tips or organizational tips, something like that. So thinking through how you can add value to your customers is super helpful. Alrighty, I'm not seeing any more questions, so I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. If you do have any more questions that you didn't get to, absolutely feel free to email me. It's Gina@uglymugmarketing.com, and I'd be happy to help you out if I can. And again, thank y'all so much for jumping in with us here today. I had a lot of fun. I hope it was valuable content. You can kind of take it and run with it. And then if you need to go back and listen to the recording, it'll be right here on Facebook. So anyway, I appreciate you guys being here, and y'all have a fantastic rest of your Thursday. And I will see you guys around. So have a good one. Bye.